I will post this and then I'll look for that other one. I really haven't had time for any kind of a study guide. I'm pulling some main stuff out of each of these, the climate denial piece and chapter 8, and then this one right here. That being said, I did just look over the exam. There was a couple terms that I want to stress for you. So even though I'm not going to do a full study guide, a couple things on there that I saw that I didn't cover. So let me copy and paste a couple terms for you, put up with some announcements so that you at least take a last look now that I've actually looked at the exam. Thanks for so many of you for unmuting your cameras or whatever. I appreciate that. Any more questions? Any other questions? Nope. Yes. Isabel, I can see the slides too. Okay. So, okay. So if you can't, email me, take care of it. I'm pretty much on my computer. I mean, I've been just grading, answer, email, grade, email, grade, answer, email, grade. Let me turn on the lights here. I don't know, hopefully that lightens it up a little bit for you all. Okay, no more questions. Oh, food drive. We've got over 6,000 pounds of food. If we reach 7,000, just as a reminder, I'll give 30 to 35 points out. If you've already given, don't worry about it. Just trying to round up the last folks that maybe haven't. And top hat points won't be calculated until mid next week at the earliest. So as long as you haven't purchased top hat, done it for 2 weeks, faded for 8 weeks, come back the last couple, most people will get full points for that. And those are actual percentage points. So, you know, for anybody who decided to do the top hat thing, like I said before, I think it's really worth it. And now, especially that people are like, you know, looking at their grades and you know, might be close. But I think even if you're just doing the extra credit for the food drive, that should be good. All right, let me.
I have a question.
Yeah.
When should we expect like the top hat points to get added to our grade?
All right. When should we expect the top hat points? I think didn't I just say that? Middle of next week?
Oh, sorry, thank you.
No, you're good. You're good. For a second, I was like, wait. I think I just said, yeah. Middle of next week. So don't email me about that or the GTAs. Next week is finals week anyway, right? So most people are still busy. You're still working away. We're still plugging away at finishing and finalizing all the grades. So yeah, should be good. Okay, let me look at our top hat questions. All right. Okay. I'll open up a couple more after class today just to make sure that you get credit for today. But don't worry, if there's a day that I didn't open them up, you don't have to worry about it. We'll do one more though today. I'll leave it open till like 11 p.m. Wow, I'm just like, it's
one more question.
Really incredible how busy I am right now. Yes.
For the post that's due today, it's just supposed to be an observation and we don't have to do like the 2 comments, right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
If you find yourself engaged in somebody else's thing, that's fine. If you just post your own, that's all that's required, really. Just sort of a gauge at the beginning of the semester and then at the end of the semester. All right. Let me come on over here. And let's look at this. Let's do some screen share here. All right. Okay. So final chapter, pragmatic environmentalism. Really, this is just a wrap up. I would have liked to have done the climate denial lecture too. We just didn't have full time for it. So please check out the climate denial lecture. I think it's really, really interesting. And, you know, we're finally getting into some things at the end of the semester, like politics and what impact do our political institutions have on our environmental policy, you know, that type of a thing. Where does the money for climate denial come from? Who perpetuates that, right? So that's an important lecture, and so is this too. Check it out here. Food is a weapon. Wow. I love old propaganda posters. Seriously, don't waste it, but wisely. Buy wisely, cook carefully, eat it all. I mean, think of the tremendous amount of social pressure. This is a time back here during World War I and II when, they really needed to put out a ton of propaganda to get people to use their resources correctly, right? You had to ration your food. You had to go fight in war, and most people did, regardless of a draft scenario. So nowadays you can kind of think, well, what do we do today? Well, we ask people to wear masks and they won't, or we encourage people to recycle. But I love these old school, historical, heavy-handed approaches at getting people to do the right thing. All right. After a semester of this class, I feel blank about our chances to repair our relationship with our natural world. You fill in the blank right now. Dave Chappelle looking good there as Prince. What do you think? After a semester of this class, are you feeling positive? Are you feeling negative? You feeling, I got a couple people here, better. Oops, sorry. What do you think? Where are we at? Where are you at? I mean, did we open enough doors to where you're like, wow, there's a lot of potential solutions? Are there so many problems that it's mind-boggling? And I'll look at the chat here. Optimistic, increased positivity, more educated, hesitant. AJ, tell me about hesitant, or more educated, or I don't know, increase any of these things. I like the words, but yeah, I'm going to make you discuss one last time here, even though I know everybody's burned out. What do you think?
I said hesitant just because we saw a bunch of solutions, but I do hope we follow through on them. And I don't know if right now we're in a place to do that.
Right. Good. Hesitant, optimistic perhaps, but hesitant, or at least we're capable. But is this, yeah, what's going on right now? I think that, yeah, nope, go ahead. I'm not going to talk. I want to hear things. More attainable, why? Optimistic, why? Follow up with the why, because we know that's the real thing here, right?
Personally, I feel very hopeful because it was really nice to kind of discuss a lot of the different pragmatic solutions that are out there, but I feel like sometimes it's easy to, I don't know, just think about like, is it too late, or kind of feel like people aren't really like actively working towards those solutions or implementing the solutions that we do have available.
Okay, good, thank you. All right, whom else?
I said, oh, go ahead.
I'll go after you.
I said better because coming into this class, I was pretty pessimistic, and I don't have a lot of faith in humanity that we're going to fix things in time. But like, for instance, in the population lecture, I don't remember his name, but he basically said that our population's going to like stabilize and reach some sort of, carrying capacity, if you will, I guess.
Yep.
And that's good to know that there's things out there that I don't know, and how we talked about in Africa and stuff like that, like seeing other perspectives and how they are dealing with things, it just provides me with like a little bit more hope. So I'm feeling a little bit better than I originally was.
Good, awesome. And Hans Rosling, what an awesome guy, right? Like one of the most dynamic lecturers in his 80s about population. Come on, if you can do that, if you're not even lecturing about something that really grips people, but you find a way to do it, great. I thought he was very positive, absolutely. Others, Olivia, were you gonna say something?
Yeah, I feel like a little bit hopeful, but I feel like there were a lot of problems that I learned that I didn't know about or like was concerned about beforehand. So it's like, I feel like we have like a bigger job ahead of us than I even thought beforehand. But before, I didn't consider that anything would be done about it. I just like was giving up on it. But now I feel like our work is cut out for us. And like, even though it's more work than I once knew, it feels more attainable for sure.
I love that combination. More work than I thought, but yet attainable and creative. I mean, what's going on right now? Personally, I feel like this class, if you're interested in the environment in as far as like you really, that's your passion, and I think a lot of people do take this class because it's their passion, you can absolutely find a way to sustain yourself with work that pays and do right by the environment in some creative way. I think that that's one of the things that I see, like, I mean, there's 15-year-olds, 12-year-olds coming up with amazing, remarkable apps and solutions and pragmatic things and like even some far out stuff. So for me, we are all now, you are all old enough to make this something you could do in your life, right? And there's so many elements of it. Like, what are you passionate about? Work needs to be done. So good. I like that combination. Anybody else? All right, cool. I'll move on. Feel free, though, to chime in. All right, Democrats care more for the environment than Republicans. Now, so that you know I'm not ultimately biased, I tried to pick weird or unflattering pictures of both of these presidents. I love George Bush, though. He looks pretty fun in that one, though. I'll tell you what, I don't know. I might want to hang out with that guy sometime. The other guy, too. Democrats care more for the environment than Republicans. I know I've got people in here that are Democrat and Republican, and people that are wise enough to not say they're any one thing, and whatever. I think it's cool if you do too. So what do you think? Agree or disagree? This isn't something, it's something that we kind of skirt around a little bit, and we're supposed to, but the reality is these political institutions and decisions make a big impact. So if we really want to know whether Democrats or Republicans, like I said before, support the environment more, it's not a mystery. You just go see what they voted for or against, right? And that really does give us a pretty quantitative, measurable look at these parties. What do you think? And I can't right now see that until somebody else pops another chat thing up there, but I didn't see what answer that person had. But Democrats care more for the environment than Republicans. Agree or disagree, and why? Most importantly, why?
I don't.
Go ahead, Olivia. You deferred last time. You're good.
Yeah, no, I would just say I disagree. Because like, especially this last election cycle, I was very surprised during the debates for the Democratic National Committee. So like choosing our nominee when we had all of them like running and all these possible candidates, only like one person out of several people mentioned like climate change is the #1 threat to America. But most people said like the economy and Trump and China and like various reasons, whether they're valid or not. Only one person like said that it was climate change, and they didn't make it long. I'm pretty sure that was Beto, but that was pretty surprising for me. It like is not on our agenda.
All right. Yeah, so disagree. With climate change just barely being a blip. We know that this administration flat out doesn't acknowledge climate change, which is wrong. That being said, the Democrats this time around, if it wasn't going to be asked in a question, nobody was going to talk about it too much out loud, which is certainly indicting for anybody that's in our government at this particular point. Absolutely. Good. Agree or disagree? What do you think?
Well, I guess in a way I kind of agree, but I don't necessarily think that Democrats care more about their environment. It's just that they have different like sort of things that they push for. So like Republicans typically kind of go for more of like economic things, and typically that makes like environmental things take a back seat, which I guess it's not that they care less for it. It's just that they push for other things that might affect the environment differently.
Sure. Good. And as we've learned this semester, as an economic model, you need to invest in the environment, or it's going to cost trillions more, right? So yeah, I think that the different parties place a different emphasis on what's important. Good. And approach, I guess they approach it in different ways. And this is a big change. Look, like I said, my grandfather had a picture of every Republican president because he gave money to each one on like an assigned letter back with a picture of them and Bush and everything. He passed away about 6-7 years ago. So nothing recent. But he was a staunch Republican his whole life. He was a banker and he helped farmers. He gave loans to ag people, and really, issues of the environment were extremely important to him. And I think that 50 years ago, 40 years ago, issues of the environment were more important to both parties before we saw sort of a big divergence in who should care, how should that look from their party. Rather, it was from both sides. We need to work together. This is the thing that sustains us. I'm not sure when we got away from that. From day one in here, I've said, I think that the environment is an inherently non-political entity. But of course, as human beings, can we behave in ways that are non-political? So, good. Anybody else? Democrats care more for the environment than Republicans?
I would say that I agree. And going off what Ryan said about economics, if the Republicans actually cared about the environment, then they would take into consideration what you were saying about how, like, it would cost them less money if they would just spend the money now and, kind of mitigate or fix some of our issues. And from personal experience, I know a lot of Republican people, and they refuse to admit that climate change is real. They don't understand, they just can't comprehend that we have any issues going on with the environment. And even in the first documentary that we watched on the trash wars,
Oh yeah,
when he went and talked to, I don't know if it was a congressman or something, and he was a Republican congressman, and literally said there's no science to back up climate change, and that wasn't real. So
yeah, and furthermore, he said, right, if you talk, and then the other guy said, if you talk to anybody about this, no flowery language, no sustainability, no help the environment. And to me, I'm just like, I've had so many facepalm moments in regards to our discussions about the environment, and I mean not our class, but the larger culture, the larger community, our nation, that it's pretty mind-blowing. Yeah, we have to simultaneously save the environment while not talking about it or scaring anyone about what's going on with it. That seems to be very much at odds with reality, right? Are environmental issues inherently political or not? You know my opinion, but my opinion is just an opinion. And I don't know, does anybody have an opinion on this? I can move on to the next slide, but anybody want to take a differing opinion or add something onto this?
Yeah, well, I think that they're made political. Kind of going back to the last question too, kind of Republicans have taken a pretty hard stance on private business taking precedent over the environment, and any restrictions on those businesses kind of leads to a lack of free enterprise from their perspective. Thus, us leaving the Paris Accord, allowing companies to drill in, federally protected land, stuff like that. And then it becomes politicized on the other spectrum. The Green New Deal is constantly said to be a new communist manifesto in a lot of ways from that side, which is sort of, not really looking into it properly. But I think it is politicized a lot by that, just as far as what private companies who are, some of the leading contributors to environmental issues and what their freedoms are compared to, our freedoms.
Yeah, I think there's a huge disconnect. We need to somehow put a halt on or education to the words communism and socialism. Because those are just emotionally triggered words that parties put out there to get people to behave in certain ways. And I'm always talking to people from other parties. I'm always talking to people that are Republicans, people that are Democrats. I had a house fire when I was 20, and the person I was living with woke up, the whole place was on fire, and she woke me up, and we jumped out onto the roof. Firefighters saved our lives, lost everything, didn't have renter's insurance. So firefighters are particularly important to me. And so when I appeal to people, I'm like, maybe folks that are Republicans, when you say the word socialism, you do want firefighters to show up at your house, right? Well, yeah, that's okay. That's socialism okay with. You were okay with the $1,200 stimulus check, right? That's a form of socialism. Well, yeah, right. So I think that those words become roadblocks and barriers for us to actually get to an open, honest discussion about anything, but particularly the environment. Yeah, excellent, good. Anybody else before I move on?
A quick point, maybe the argument for defunding the police should be made is that we don't want socialism in our police force, and maybe then it would carry more weight on certain sides.
I mean, there are so many smart ways to frame this, and something tells me there's just also a force field up, and some people are never gonna receive that information for whatever reason. Democrats, Republicans, people who are non-affiliated, sometimes whatever, we put up that force field as human beings for sure. Yeah, that's good. That's funny though. Okay, so we can look at 2009, and I think that I hope Michael updates his book here. He's our social behavioral sciences dean. We do have this. This is a second edition, but he is your social behavioral sciences dean. He's on the B wing of Clark, the guy who wrote this textbook. So love this. We need to update this, but I think that we are only going to find this to be more extreme, would be my guess, looking at this and the progression of this for years and years. So relationship of political ideology to view of climate change source. Okay, so liberals, more alarmed, concerned, and then fading to disengaged, where Republicans or conservative people, I guess, we should really just call this Republican and Democrat. Conservative is, I mean, that's just gone from the Republican Party. We need to be realistic about that. And again, I come from a grandfather that cut his own benefits. That is conservatism. Okay. Then we start to see the increase in Republican attitudes or conservatives to become more disengaged, much more cautious, doubtful, and of course, in an extreme far greater than Democrats, completely dismissive as we look at our relationship or concern about the environment. So overall, we do know that politically liberal, or those folks that identify as politically liberal, are more concerned about global warming. Politically liberal folks hold stronger egalitarian environmental values, like let us approach this with some equality for others. Less concerned conservatives hold anti-egalitarian values. Conservative views also very strongly individualistic. And this is not a surprise to us. One of the big sort of driving cultural values is in this country is rugged individualism. Get it yourself, go out in the woods and chop it down, strangle it, kill it, bring it back and wear it or eat it. And so this is not new for us, right? Conservatives more likely to be evangelicals with strongly traditional religious beliefs. Perhaps I have here, though not trying to be too snarky, but not so much in action when we start to look at that piece. Because once we get into a larger religious base and the evangelical base, then we're off the charts for dismissive about climate change. Then we're not really looking at a large base of people that trust the science. Then we're into like belief land, which I know first lecture in here I said, if it's going to bother you this semester that we're going to talk about science and that instead of beliefs, you should drop the class day one. You will not bother me, right? Worldviews in nature. Good question. Worldview test question. Fundamental cognitive orientation shared by individuals within which is rooted the entirety of knowledge. Wow. That's pretty incredible. But if we look at things from Western philosophy, oftentimes nature takes a secondary status, right? In ways it's inherently alien to us. We perceive it, but we definitely dwell separately from it. Now, if you've got an Earthship and you're collecting your own water and you're getting passive solar and you're growing food in your house, I mean, then we're not separate from it. But a lot of times, our living or dwelling spaces keep us separate. I think we've managed somewhat to objectify nature into a somewhat meaningless realm. It's this thing that is out there rather than this thing that is right here. We could look at ecofeminism, and from this perspective, the objectification of women and nature, right? Even including modern birthing, where we cast nature into a female gender, and therefore, and again, this is Social 100 stuff. Many of you have had Social 100 and or had Social 100 even with me. We sort of render it passive and we apply our human gender cultural constructs onto that. So we are losing our socio-ecological relationships that language is tethered to, and I guess at what cost? Meaning that as we look at, and I asked you, what is your relationship with your natural world? We've been talking about that all semester long. It is essential that we maintain that in a strong way. I think the cost is, pretty obvious. The further we get away from that, the less we will do for the environment, for our natural world, and we're already scraping the bottom of the barrel in ways with what we're trying to do. So, I asked this question of you earlier in the semester, so no need to answer it, but I think that most people have an answer to this, however, right? What has strengthened your relationship with the natural world while you're growing up? Maybe it's this last year getting into Students for Sustainability. Maybe it's growing a community garden. It could be just hiking. It could be all sorts of things. So was it long lasting? Was it meaningful? I guess the point here, is what was that piece and how do we translate that to others? How do we get other people to have long lasting, meaningful relationship with their natural world in ways that strengthen it, right? So don't phase out Eco Week because we can't afford it. Keep that program going. My parents used to do a week-long. Eco Week is now like 2 or 3 days, maybe 3 days. My parents used to do a whole week-long thing with hiking and trust falls and climbing and canoeing, you name it. And it was a week-long thing at Camp White Eagle. A lot of schools did this. Somebody breaks an arm, they have a lawsuit, the school district decides to pull back on these things. Same thing is true with a city or municipality, right? So how do we keep meaningful, long-lasting, important pieces where as you grow up, you're strengthening your relationship with the environment? That's obviously, a lot of people's solution papers in here touched on some form of education or another, right? And so that becomes really critical. All right, so what are the differences here between these? Denial, ambivalence, and apathy. Literal denial, okay? When people hold on to beliefs that are demonstrably false. Climate change skeptics. Now, if you look at the climate change denial lecture, a lot of this is paid for, right? There are organizations that pay millions and millions and millions of dollars to get people not to vote, to not vote, to get people to feel that environmental conditions aren't really happening, that we don't have these challenges to sustainability and air and water, you name it. So literal denial, it's not happening. Implicitory denial, when we fail to respond according to the moral and rational codes of the day. We could say that this is the type of denial that took place for most citizens during Nazi Germany. If these people are removing people from their homes, killing them, if they're setting new laws, and as long as they're not targeting me, it's not happening, okay? And really that's all it takes for something like that to happen, for people to fail to respond to the moral and rational codes of the day. Like, you've got a soft coup in the making when we know that there was no voter fraud, we had a very safe election, and yet people are failing to respond. We have 88 senators, Republican senators, legislators that are still in denial of the results of the election. That is dangerous territory. It's dangerous for the environment. It was dangerous in Nazi Germany. It is dangerous to democracy right now. And then collective ignorant bliss, thinking about climate change. Look, ignorance is bliss. And sometimes, right, like it's the, what's the movie with the blue pill, red pill? Matrix, right? And it's kind of like that. In a way, teaching all this stuff, in a way, once in a while, I'm like, I wish I had taken the other pill, right? Because I think about issues of the environment a lot. And I'm sure that a lot of people in this class do too, right? If we think about climate change, it makes us fearful for the future, guilty, helpless. Look, maybe they're collectively resisted through emotional management, norms of conversation, use of narratives to justify the past. It's don't worry about it. It's not as big of a deal. You name it. We blame shift to those people that have all those kids. A lot of people can afford to deny it. They're not going to be impacted by it anyway. However, in social positioning as well. But the reality, I think, here is that ignorant bliss doesn't help us. And it doesn't, although it's nice once in a while. And look, we talk about solutions in here because I don't want people in here to be like, take this class, and most people said a little bit better, optimistic, a little bit better, hesitant, but better. I don't want people at the end of this class to be like, I am racked with fear because I can't breathe the air and drink the water, and holy shit, oh my God, what, right? Like, I get that, but that's not my goal. And I know that for our purposes, ignorant bliss doesn't help us at all because it doesn't get us any closer to any solutions, right? Okay, Chat, let me look at that. Agreed. Good. Oops. Head back here. Environmental skepticism, good test question. A position that attempts to undermine knowledge claims, supporting the claim that environmental problems are real and the result of human activity. I don't like asking this question down here because it's garbage, right? What are the benefits to that? Well, you keep your job in office. You make money as a corporation. You don't have to do as much work in your neighborhood. We already know, even though science supports it, that there are going to be a certain group of people that pump a whole lot of money into people being skeptical about our environment and actually work long and hard, like you are working at your classes, or maybe you're not, but long and hard at making sure that these things don't take root, that collectively we don't all say, yes, this is happening. As long as we can get, those people can get enough people to deny it, they're doing their job. All right, so as we look at ideology, political ideology and counter movements, major conservative environmental counter movement emerges in the 1990s. If you remember, that's the same time when we're talking about environmental justice starting to ramp up, right? Having people have rights for what happens to them, particularly having corporations and things like that be held accountable, which we know they're not. Most times it's not in criminal court, that's in civil court. And so even if a company spills, like in Bhopal, India, a lot of toxic gas and kills thousands, they may never do anything but pay a 10% of a minor, type of a fine. Republican green scare. I have here from red scare. It needs a scare to, doesn't need a scare to politically thrive, but communism, the red scare, now we've got a green scare, and we've got people working against the idea of greening, working against the idea of a green, movement. And this is intentional. A lot of this actually is in that climate change denial lecture. Conservative think tanks counter environmental knowledge with non-scientific material. I mean, it's a lot like what's been going on over the last couple months of this election. You're 1 in 49 in court because you presented no evidence. But if you shout the word loud enough, whatever that is, right? Environmentalism costs money. Activist, activist, activist. Just like you're shouting fraud, maybe it sticks. I know that, climate change also is threatening to conservative movements because it threatens that myth of infinite economic growth. But as we've already looked at, economically speaking, putting money into the environment ahead of time, only going to save you trillions of dollars. And we've got new economic models to look at that prove that we don't have infinite economic growth. As a matter of fact, there are more really substantive economic models coming out about how to actually measure what we're doing with the economy that I think you're going to see change capitalism quite a bit in the next 20 to 30 years. And climate change threatens the entire worldview of conservatives to the core, particularly if the people that vote for them have been convinced, right, that climate change is a joke, that it's a scam, that it's not real. And this has a lot of repercussions, right? Right now, conservative people, there's a very important runoff in the state of Georgia where they're finding that Republican people don't want to go out and vote for this thing again because Republicans told them that voting was fraudulent. I mean, could there be any more of a vicious circle? And that is the same thing when we're talking about the environmental piece, or at least it's a very similar thing. Oh, I love that movie at the bottom, The Usual Suspects. Not sure who else is a big fan of that movie, but if you've never seen The Usual Suspects, you should. So it's not only conservatives, though. White males have a higher than average income and are overly confident in their views, no matter how demonstrably false those views are. Again, those are privilege pieces. Those are pieces in which are ways in which they are dominant to our culture, right? So as long as you are dominant and you have that disproportionate share of power, you can continue to blindly sort of deny it, right? And privilege, and I've talked about privilege, that is how privilege undermines us. That is exactly why privilege is not necessarily a positive thing for us, because in ways it keeps us from acting, keeps us from being engaged, and fools us as to the conditions in society. Conservative white males, we know this already, proportionally occupied positions of power in our economic system. We need these power dynamics to shift because right now we are getting what we have always gotten, and in regards to the environment, that is not helping. The resources available to these people make it far less likely that they will be severely threatened by climate change soon. We talked about how people that are more powerful or that have more power, access, or dominant in our culture can resist some of the externalities of climate change. And that continues to be very true. Good definition. Sociological ambivalence. It focuses on the ways in which ambivalence comes to be built into the structure of social statuses and roles, right? So it doesn't necessarily mean indifference. It comes from this perceived tension from people, right? What I want to do and what we believe we could do. That's that essential question that I asked. Do you think fixing the environment is, right? And I know I've got downing quotes over fixing, but it's really, apathy is not just really about caring too little, but being sort of overloaded with the idea that there are too many things. So people also tend, as we look at human beings across the board sociologically, to tune out problems that they feel they just can't change. So this is just for you to think about. How can we make a positive impact on environmental issues if our mental formations are preventing that notion preemptively? Do you know what I'm saying here? Is this making sense? Thumbs up? Right? Like if we already are socialized in our statuses, in our roles in society to think that something can't be done or that it's too great of a thing to be able to accomplish, will we ever get there? Will we ever get to where we want to be in regards to helping the environment? All right. Consumerism, advertising, and social attainment. There's the Rosie, the Bounty Quicker Picker Upper. You've never probably seen those commercials. They're pretty funny older commercials from the 70s and 80s. But advertising promotes rabid consumerism, right? And how much we consume, we know as a nation, so much more of everything, raw materials, food, energy, you name it. So overall, it's that intrinsic and extrinsic values. Intrinsic aspects of life that we find rewarding, like I'm gonna volunteer at the food bank because or donate food because there's a lot of people that simply can't eat right now. They don't have access to food. Or extrinsic lies in that validation given to us by others. Shop, you're good, go do this. If you get this new phone or this new thing or whatever that is, that's being a good citizen, right? And we know that social control is a very real thing. We talk about that. That's society's attempt to control your thoughts or behaviors. It's also an advertising rule of 10. Gotta have Charmin, 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 gotta have Charmin. By the time you hear gotta have Charmin, the next time you go to the store, you're like, I think I'm gonna chafe if I don't have Charmin, right? And I know at first that sounds ridiculous, but it's the advertising rule of 10. It seems to be what human beings respond to. So when you place a greater importance on those extrinsic values, you're more likely to be prejudiced towards others. You're less concerned about the environment and human rights, and you express lower levels of well-being and happiness because you're expecting that to come from out there when really a lot of that comes from in here, okay? And obviously extrinsic values, advertisers are going to appeal to those big time. All right, that's Zion 7 years ago. That's a baby pit bull. Look at how cute that baby pit bull is. Oh my goodness. Look at that. That's Alma when she was just a tiny puppy. Yep. Anyway, which is better for a child's well-being? Higher involvement in consumer culture or less involvement in consumer culture? You already know what the answer is. Obviously, a child's well-being is improved by less involvement in consumer culture. All right, solutions. So we've been working on solutions all semester long. I just like to say, you can do it when we're talking about this, because you can, right? Consumption is like, we see consumption as like a social activity, but how many people's consumption has drastically dropped over this last year, right? I mean, COVID, right? All of a sudden, people are spending more time with themselves. They're spending more time with their families. They are not going out as much. That's when that intrinsic thing becomes really important to who we are as people. And so goes it with our consumption habits, right? Regulating advertising directing at children would be a good idea. Creating advertisement-free zones. Places that kids frequent, limit the types of advertisements, age limits. And it's not just parents that are responsible, because really, you know, all of this is at the expense of individual and public health as far as a lot of the ways that we advertise and get people to think and feel and believe and act towards the environment There are better ways, right? How about collaborative consumption? You know, so many people now doing tool sharing and ride sharing, you name it. I mean, access is a tough one, but we want efficient and fair resource allocation. You know, do these economic models work? Do the people that are in charge of these economic models, do they deserve to be? What are the biases that we have there? Because markets do not solve the problems. Markets are not a holy grail. Free markets are not free, right? We know that markets can't achieve this, and there usually is something better. So, I mean, social media I have here might actually have a purpose. Who needs a market when you have collaborative consumption? When you can rent something, when you can be put in contact with somebody? How many times have you on your Facebook or in social media said, I need to borrow this? Who has one? And right away, somebody's like, I have it. Matter of fact, I have it for free. I think this summer I was like, my lawnmower broke down. Does anybody have one I can borrow? And one of my friends was like, somebody gave us a new one. Yeah, you can have my old one. It works great, right? So there are a lot of options for us to be positive or make a positive impact for the environment, with the environment, that are basically designed around different ways to consume. If we're even shifting 1/5 of our household spending from purchasing to renting, which I think people are doing a lot of, we can cut our CO2 emissions by 2%, by 4%, by 6%, you name it, right? Car sharing, a lot of people can't afford vehicles to begin with, but obviously changing our transportation habits is another way. Major impact on the environment, major personal savings. Maybe we'll see the light rail go through the entire state of Colorado, hopefully soon. All right. What if, and now we are, 'tis the season, right? Although I think Black Friday has mellowed out a lot. What if we went from this, because we're talking about consuming, to this, right? This to this, right? How about we change it? Whether it's gender constructs, racial constructs, environmental constructs, but how about this? How about people sharing experiences, sharing resources, connecting to their community, building social capital? Because this right here, folks, where people literally the last few years have been killed on Black Friday, this is not social capital building, right? This is not community building. And that's how we're going to make an impact on the environment that's positive. So boycott, forget a boycott. I like this. Every time you spend $1, 50 cents, you name it, you are voting with your dollars. So build social networks, build trust, generate social capital, meet people's needs, strengthen our existing ties. I mean, whatever that is, let's reward instead of punish. I hate the idea of not voting or voting for somebody because they're a jerk. Like, I'm gonna vote against them. Well, huh? Like, I mean, I would hope that we have people to vote for that are better than that. That there are products out there that we can use our dollars for that are better than that. So we can reward businesses that engage in socially and environmentally responsible practices. Like, obviously, not just shop local, but who really goes the extra, mile for the environment? I want to shop with them. It builds up or strengthens businesses that are smaller, independent, that is more socially connected to individuals. We could go back 50, 60, 70 years before these giant box stores, and these smaller places were important. And it does reframe the way that we look at consumption, shopping, and in turn, right, just like Yoda, you must unlearn what you have learned. It gives us a chance to do that in regards to consumption, right? And I think it's hugely valuable to reconnect us to local, reconnect us to what's right in front of us, reconnect us to a sustainable community. Now, how much effort do you put into engaging and facilitating positive environmental change? Everybody here is at a different place. We can do more. Some of us are doing less. Some of us are doing not a lot, but we want to do more, whatever that is. All right. And I know I'm kind of finishing up quickly here as we wrap up, but environmental concern, the degree to which people are aware of problems regarding the environment and support efforts to solve them. I mean, what are people aware of and what are they going to do about it? Actually, behaviors, right? I think individuals in affluent countries hold more post-material value, and these are this is data, not just I think this, but we have collected this data. Sociologists will hold more post-materialistic values. These values will grow, which tends to justify the status quo. We need economic development that will lead nations towards socially and politically tolerant, sustainable, and post-material futures. It does not all revolve around what we have. And I think that, look, basic materials and resources and all sorts of privileges disappearing because we are having to save our asses. So materialism is going to take a hit regardless. But if we make this the direction, the momentum that we're headed, then we're more prepared for it like anything else, right? All right, are the poor more concerned about the environment? They are. Citizens of poorer nations express personal concern about the environment more. They rate the quality of national environment as poor more often. They rate community environment as poor if the conditions aren't there, and they perceive that major problems exist now and in the future, whereas people in more affluent nations are, we can kind of, Facebook, YouTube, whatever that might be, right? So I think that what we can learn from this, I have the poor here are often the more generous, but it pays to be able to look at things sociologically from someone else's perspective. If you live in an affluent nation, if you have any kind of measure of privilege, I mean, I don't have a lot of privilege. My parents were teachers. They didn't have a lot of money left at the end of every month, but compared to the rest of the world, we have a lot of privilege. So I think we can learn that there's a great deal of the environment that we can do right by, and there's a great deal of happiness that awaits us for doing that. All right. Best strategy is a multitude of approaches, folks. Social norms play a big role in behavior change. Just look at it. If somebody says wear a mask, people do. If they say it doesn't matter, things go the other way. Social norming is very, very, very important. Who's reinforcing it, how much, and why, okay? Look, old-fashioned peer pressure works. Do it. Whatever, treat the environment right, mask up, don't build a cell phone tower in your church steeple in my backyard, whatever that is, right? Look, you don't have to be an activist to help, and honestly, you don't even have to care an excessive amount more than other people to change. And that's lucky for us, considering that we do have a bit of a cultural love affair with being lazy, right? And that's not meant to be, a diss on us. I think every single person here can acknowledge that. So what are they doing in their community? House of Neighborly Services, Larimer County Food Bank, NoCo Food Cluster, Sustainable Living Food Association, the Food School, community gardens, parental involvement, a waste disposing diversion, city composting. What are the city goals, okay, in this town? Fort Collins or wherever it is that you live. Okay. Hey, everybody. Let me sort of jump off that. That's a lot of talking over the course of the last hour. Are there any questions, things that you want to interject, concerns that you have, anything as we wrap up this semester of environmental sociology? Anything? I'm just going to wait just a second here.
I have a question. I have a question about the class, but it's not about the sociology, I guess.
That's fine. Go ahead, man.
Okay, so I was looking at the grades, and I noticed I was just kind of that some of my other classes weren't doing like A minuses. Is there A minuses for this class?
There are. Yep. And we go 90, 80, 70, 60. But if you've got an 89, it's a B plus, not just a B. I mean, I think that does matter to your grade point average. If it's a 90, maybe it's an A minus. I think that's it. And it's not like 90 through 93 is an A minus. A 90, it's just that first one on the cusp of each. Yeah. And that's why it's like the food drive, so important. Like, because what happens is people start to add up their grade at the end, and truly they're 5 points away from something, and if you participate in the food drive, you're kind of making sure like that you take care of that. Nobody wants to be a point away. Now, what if, Jason, I'm 1 point or 2 points away from the next grade level? I don't know. Sometimes I look over and see if people did participate in the food drive. You know, sometimes I take a look and see what was somebody's engagement in the class. How many people, teachers do this all the time. How many people were participating? How many people do I know? Jacqueline, Susan, Ryan, AJ, you know, Justine, Sean, there are people that I recognize that I see Alex all the time. Does that matter when a teacher's grading? You bet. But for the most part, that's how it's going to go, 90, 80, 70, 60. And I think a lot of people are doing very well in here. If you've done Top Hat, that's going to help a tremendous bit. If you've donated food, which is open until Friday, that'll help. Anything else? Any questions, concerns, anything?
I'm kind of just curious to hear your opinion on like this whole climate clock thing. Do you think that's like legit?
Go ahead. Explain to me. I mean, I've heard this. You're talking about, go ahead. I'll let you.
I think the Washington Post came out with like this article that New York like propped up this huge screen that's basically counting down the years we have until the world ends because we don't do anything about climate change. And it was like 7 years or something. It was like relatively in the near future. And I definitely agree that like when you're asking the question earlier about how I feel about all of this, I definitely feel like there needs to be a lot of urgency. Like I do feel better, but like it needs to, like we need to address these quickly. And then I just like I was reminded of that, and I was curious to see.
Yeah.
Thoughts are.
Personally, look, we needed to do that 20, 30 years ago. I mean, I'm not a big motivator of fear, and I don't think fear really motivates, but at a certain point, let's be real. Like, we should have done something about this 30 years ago, 40 years ago, 20 years ago. It's 2020, and damn near half or more than half of the government doesn't even want to acknowledge the existence of climate change. That's going to hurt. That's going to hurt you. That's going to hurt you. It's going to hurt these two people on either side of me. It's going to hurt your family and your family and your family and your family. I mean, so I don't want to scare people, but I don't know. And I saw something recently where they're like, you've got 2 weeks to do it. And it was like 2 weeks afterwards. And somebody's like, oh, yeah, so we still have 2 weeks? And I can't remember what that was. That's like a Futurama. Who knows? But yeah, even if we put that up there, you know what it's going to be like. It's going to be the Friday of those 7 years. And on that Thursday, somebody's going to be like, hey, can we still do this? In which case, I don't know, maybe some ethereal nature. Maybe the Lorax will pop up and be like this. Wouldn't that be awesome? If the Lorax didn't pop out of a stump and was like, we're going to do it together. If he just popped out of here, put on some shades and was like, I'm out of here. Screw all you guys. I mean, we're almost there, right? We're almost there. I don't know if the world's going to end, but I think that this needs to be in people's faces. And if a handful of politicians are tasked to represent 7 billion people and they're not doing it, find somebody better. Sorry, that's my little soapbox. Fire those. Most of these people are temps, right? So if they're not addressing your issues of the environment, fire them with your vote. Or more importantly, like I said before, hire somebody else who has a real plan. You know, that's always a good idea. Anybody else? Sort of broad environmental pieces. All right. Here, let me say this. It's kind of like, there, now I'll look like I'm bald if I just like put my giant forehead up there and you can't see that. Change my look. Hey, let me be real and honest with you all. This was a very difficult semester for me. My mom passing is probably the single greatest point of grief in my entire life. And it was my job this semester to come back here to class with enthusiasm and excitement and love for all of you. And, you know, in many ways I was able to accomplish that. And I think I'd like some things to have been better over the course of the semester from my perspective. But I guess I never realized how important my students would be to me. So I don't want to downplay that. And I love my students, but I have a greater sense of the importance of all of you in my life. Thank you very much. Your presence and me teaching, because my mom was a teacher for 40 years. This is, I wasn't going to tap out. I was just gonna, I don't like violent metaphors either, but I was gonna try and crush this thing this semester. But your help and people reaching out to me with kind words and thoughtfulness and understanding, that's my goal. So as a teacher, if you missed an assignment, if you turned in something late, but your life was whatever it was tough, I want to be a compassionate individual, and I really hope that now that the sun is mostly down, I hope that other teachers are doing the same thing. I think that they are. So I guess I never realized the value of my students to me personally in my life. So it did help. It did help looking at your faces and cruising on and doing this. So thank you very, 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 very much. If you got turned on to a new idea here, if you learned something new, if you have a different way to talk to your friends that aren't involved in the environment, then that's my goal accomplished. And if you think I'm a shitty teacher and all you did was donate money and give somebody a meal this holiday season, then mission accomplished. See, for me, I want to get better and I want to be a great teacher, but people aren't always going to like Jason Downey. I'm fine with that. If you did something for the environment, for you or for others, that was selfless and positive this semester, then you are awesome. So I think you are good people. I think you do good things. And I hope that the rest of the world continues to underestimate you, because you consistently prove that greater and greater things can be done by young people. And so move over if you're not on that train in regards to helping the environment out. Thank you for the kind words. And I'm going to post this chapter PowerPoint. I'm going to, look, super nice stuff here from everybody. Thank you. I look forward to this class. And because I love teaching, and usually it's like full contact. You can imagine, right? I mean, it's my class. I trip over a chair, or I go to sit on the front table where we would have class. I have flipped over before. I play music before class. We jam out and I like crank the tunes. There's so many ways in which this is different than what I normally do. But right now, stuff's different. Life is a bit different. So I'm hoping that that things are good for you. I hope you're safe. And I don't know, I could drag this out all day because it's our last class period. And I'm really going to miss teaching until next semester, in which I will be entirely virtual as well. So, I guess I'm just going to continue. Maybe I should do some live streams from the farm. Oh, hey, wait, hold on one second. All right. One last thing to know about chickens. Chickens only lay eggs when they want to, right? And it's not just that it's getting dark and they lay less. I had my babies, remember, right? This semester, the babies got killed, correct? And I got new ones, and they're now big enough. 2 nights ago, I opened up the door between the babies, and that room for the babies has most of the laying boxes, although there's like 12 laying boxes in the other room too, but those chickens don't like those laying boxes. So for the last couple months, we've been getting like 2 eggs a day. This is what I got. First night I opened up the new jams. Whoa, check that out. Did you even know that eggs come in all these colors? And then you see that really big one, duck egg. So just got, I think 15 the other night, 18 the other night. So for those of you that have been following the drama, here, come on in, Storm. Come on in. Last class period. I'm going to embarrass my 15-year-old. This is Storm, and Storm is the chicken master. All things chicken. He's keeping them alive, keeping them safe, keeping them happy. He sees them every single day. Speaking of which, we need baby food tomorrow, Dad. Thank you for that, Storm. Thank you. All right. On that note, on that happy note for this semester, that's just the thing about having a farm. Oh, I love pit bulls. What's up? Oh, you're so cute. Anyway, sorry. I love pit mixes. Alex, well played.
Hey, you want to see something funny real fast? You want to go for walkies? Walkies? We're going to go after class. She loves walkies.
Oh, looks like she just took something out to get to the door. Awesome. I also realized this semester that our Boston Terrier, who's 2 years old, has only been on a leash once, up to a couple weeks ago, because she lives on a farm. So we got her a little tiny harness and a leash, and we're now taking the dogs on walks. I guess I just take it for granted when dogs can run like 4 acres all day long. So I'm gonna go on some walkies too. Everybody be safe, have a happy holidays, be good people and do good things. And thank you for being such amazing people. If you have any questions, I'm here all week. I'm here all next week, folks. Stay patient. Don't reach out about top hat points till midweek. Do not forget exam 4. And let me go in and post a few things online. And if there's anything missing, reach out to me, because I want to make sure you have everything you need for this last test. Also on Facebook, we are Ravensdale Farm. Here is, since we are done, I can now do this. JulieDowningArt.com. This is my partner's website. She's an artist. She does some really, really amazing watercolor paintings with inking. Some of them of Red Rocks. She did like Red Rocks prints for like 10 years in a row when the kids were little. Check out that artwork. Here's the name of the band that I'm in. For the last 15 years, we just released an album called More Than Ever. It's on Apple, iTunes, Spotify. We've got, this is our 5th album. So now that it's not super formal anymore, this is some of what I do. The farm is Ravensdale. If you ever want to come out and see the farm, see the chickens, walk the property, mask up, and talk about biodiversity or anything like that, talk about what's going on in the community. If after this you want to major in social, or you want to know what's going on with different groups in Fort Collins, still consider me a resource for you, okay? Because until you're gone from CSU, and maybe even after that, because I've got some great relationships with students, I want to be a resource for you. All right, take care, everybody. Peace. Thanks a lot. You're all fantastic humans. Love you. Bye.
Thank you so much.